welcome to the Sandro Linux Community Podcast. It is the 5th of January 2024, so it is of course the first podcast of the new year, so it is the year 2024 now, so we're coming to you with some more news, and I hope you guys are having a good new year. Happy New Year, everybody. And let's get on started with the news. So, hello, Piggis. So, Piggis is joining me today on Discord. No Farmer Josh today, no Crash. So we'll get on started with the mobile news to start with. So, there is apparently now a physical keyboard for iPhone. So there's a new keyboard case called Clicks, which has been produced by a company partially founded by the YouTuber Michael Fisher, who runs the YouTube channel Mr. Mobile. So he's quite well known in the YouTube space, covers a lot of stuff to do with different mobile devices, older stuff as well as current stuff. So, of course, he's very well known for his good YouTube content, and now apparently with Clicks, he's also venturing in to the mobile phone case space, I guess. So have you seen this before, Piggis? Have you seen this keyboard accessory? Do you have any thoughts on it? I mean, apparently they've been working with the same company that did the phone with the keyboard for Android, the FX something phone. I forget what it's called exactly. But it came with some interesting software, and it was a phone with an actual dedicated keyboard, a hardware keyboard. Did you hear about that? Do you remember what the name is? Okay. But yeah. Do you have any thoughts at all? Yeah, it does look a bit clunky potentially, carrying around that all the time. And also, it may prevent you from using a different case. So if you don't want to get your phone scratched, if you don't want to, have this damage to your precious iPhone, then, this might not be the best idea, as well as the fact that this is currently only on iPhone. So if you're using an Android phone and you're not using one with a dedicated keyboard, you're kind of out of luck here. They haven't produced anything for Android phones yet, so we'll just have to wait and see if this is successful and if they end up expanding to Android phones. Because apparently they're apparently using the wired port to connect this device, which makes sense. So it will just go into your USB-C port or your Lightning port, and I guess that's how most of these types of cases are powered. All of the accessory case type stuff. And it's interesting to see this. It looks quite interesting, but I'm not really sure how many users there will be for it. Yeah. So what other with other like alphabets are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? Yeah. Unless you had some way of holding down keys to get certain things, and like, I don't know. If you could extend it that way, maybe that could work. With different types of cases. So if they rolled out like different different types of cases for different markets. Maybe that might work. But yeah, I can see a bit of a size problem there when it comes to yeah, the size of the keyboard. Anyway, moving on to the Android news here. So you can now get $50 when you trade in, not trade in, when you reserve a Galaxy S24 phone. So this is $50 of Samsung credit. And of course, The Verge here, they've got a link for it. And of course, it seems to be some sort of affiliate link. So, you know, maybe just find it yourself. But yeah, apparently this is a deal in the US. And you have to supply your name and your email address on Samsung's website. But if you do reserve this Galaxy S24, you can get this $50. So, and apparently, yeah, you don't have to pay anything right away. So you could, of course, kind of move away from it if you saw the actual S24 and you thought, that doesn't look like a phone I want. However, yeah, I think you'll have to wait until you actually put the money down to get the credit. So there's no kind of getting away with getting a free $50 here. You will have to pay for the phone. However, it's better than waiting for the phone to come out and then actually having to pay full price for it and not getting that extra credit. Maybe it's worth it. However, of course, if you want to get the best value, you can just wait a couple years down the line and you'll be able to get this phone probably second hand for much less money. So if you're really caring about value and yeah, all that, you should probably just wait to get it on the second hand market. What do you think, Piers? Okay, let's move to the next story here. So I was really debating with myself whether to include this as under the Android news, but yeah, I've decided to. Honor apparently signed a 5G patent license agreement with Nokia. So of course this is kind of in the telecommunication space a bit, but this agreement will apparently allow them to access these patents um, and yeah, this will probably help both companies with, you know, being able to use Nokia's intellectual property for 5G. I imagine this would make sense for Honor's phones and Nokia's phones. But I'm not exactly sure how this agreement is working. Do you have any ideas, Biggest? Yeah, because it seems rather light on detail. Because, yeah, apparently they have agreed a 5G license patent license agreement with Honor. So, yeah, I suppose they'll be sharing patents when it comes to 5G or something. So that could have some broad reaching consequences. And of course, Honor are quite a big phone maker, and Nokia have a lot of the 5G tech. So it kind of makes a good pairing there for Honor to sign this agreement. Anyway, moving on to the next story. So there's only one story I wanted to cover this week with the gaming news, and that is that the developer of the founder, one of the co-creators of Warhammer, has sadly died. So Brian Ansell has died, and he was apparently a managing director of Games Workshop during the 1980s. And yeah, so he was one of the co-founders of this, one of the co-creators of this very famous game, very successful. I personally am not a big Warhammer fan just because, you know, I don't really like to play those kind of games. But I know many people enjoy Warhammer. It's got quite a big following in the UK, in England. So yeah, it's sad news, and I guess it marks a new era for the Warhammer community. What do you think, Piggers? Okay, let's move on to the broadband and cellular news. So in more bad news, I suppose, apparently a survey has showed that 2.7 million people in the UK are unprepared for the 3G switch off. So, of course, they've been planning to switch off 3G and in the UK before they even switch off 2G. And yeah, clearly, they think that 3G isn't really there's not really that many people using specifically 3G. And yeah, apparently there are still 2.7 million people relying on this cellular technology. And yeah, if you have a 3G handset, then you could be affected by the switch off. So Vodafone apparently planned to switch off 3G and is aiming to complete it by the end of 2023. But they're actually doing it in January 2024. So that's happening right now. And Free are planning to turn off their 3G network gradually and switch it totally off by the end of 2024, and EE are planning to switch it off by March 2024. And O2 are apparently switching off in 2025. So they haven't actually put an end date on when it will all be switched off when it comes to O2. But the general trend is these mobile networks are trying to switch off 3G. Maybe they can reallocate the bandwidth somewhere else. Not the bandwidth, the frequency somewhere else. Because, of course, Ofcom auction off different frequency spaces when it comes to radio. And yeah, maybe 3G, once it's fully switched off, maybe that frequency can be used for something else. But yeah, of course, for all these customers who aren't actually prepared for the switch off, this could be pretty bad. Because they won't be able to communicate unless they use 2G. And if they switch off the 2G lines, if they switch off 2G signal, then of course, there's no way of communicating on a 3G phone. Now, yeah, I guess these 2.7 million people will just have to migrate over to 4G. Because right now it does not appear that there'll be anybody stopping these networks from switching off the 3G, their 3G networks. Of course, Free UK actually started with 3G. So Free started back in the 2000s with their 3G network, and now they're going to be switching that off. So that's interesting. Of course, Free don't even have a 2G network to deal with, so they kind of are switching off all of their legacy networks, I guess, because they've only got 3G. But yeah, I guess this will just be something that people have to deal with. What do you think, Piggis? Yeah, it is annoying because I have some old 3G phones that will be affected by this. Like, I've got a Nokia N8, I've got a Nokia Lumia 800, which all won't be able to connect to the cellular networks once this switch off has occurred. And of course, this is happening in other countries as well. The UK is doing this quite quickly. But in other countries, they are also doing this. Piggis, do you know in Sweden, what's the situation with 3G? Are they switching it off or not? Yeah, because in the US they've been doing 2G and 3G switch offs when it comes to different networks. Like, yeah, so we'll just have to see how this develops. I mean, they're even planning to get rid of landline service in the UK soon. So yeah, there'll be a lot of stuff being switched off soon. Lots of legacy technology, and yeah, who knows how this will affect people. But let's hope that people can switch away from these old technologies and maybe switch to a 4G or a 5G device. Now, of course, if you're an elderly person, you may only have your old device, maybe your 3G or 2G device. And yeah, for those users who may not have the kind of technical knowledge, they might not actually want to switch over to 4G devices or 5G devices, and they may not know that they have to. So yeah, for them, this is pretty bad news. And I reckon quite a decent proportion of the people in the survey who said that who said that they still used 3G were actually older. Because it says here 24% of people aged 75 and up were unsure about whether their phone is 4G or 5G ready. So yeah, that's quite a high percentage, and yeah, this just isn't good news for accessibility, I don't think. Anyway, moving. Yes, sorry, Pigus, what were you saying for me? So the free in the UK is apparently switching off their 3G sooner than the Swedish provider with a similar name, um, owned by the same company, obviously. So yeah. Anyway, moving on to the Linux news. Have you ever used this piece of software, Pigus? Because I haven't personally. I haven't. Uh, Schreibus. Uh, yes. It's apparently a desktop publishing app. So maybe it's competing a bit with Microsoft Publisher. Because yeah, it looks like a pretty cool looking tool, and it's now got a new release. So it is 1.6. That's replacing the existing 1.4.8 stable version and the 1.5 X development series. And yeah, apparently there's a revamp of the light and dark modes, new icons, a new PDF based Outlook preview, and a resource manager component for accessing online resources like dictionaries. So there's a lot of new features here for users of this publishing app. It does look like a pretty cool project. I'll probably check it out soon because it does look pretty interesting. So I'll probably check it out on Raspberry Pi. I don't know if it's on Raspberry Pi. I'll have to check it out. But yeah, it is a cool release. So that will probably be coming to repos soon. Do you have any thoughts, Pigeth? I also want to add that it apparently adds the ability to open and import files created from some other desktop publishing programs such as Adobe InDesign, XML format, Adobe InDesign snippets, Adobe PageMaker, Apple iWorks pages, Microsoft Publisher, Quake Express tags, Viva Designer XML, and Zara page, and I don't know, yeah. Anyway, they've added some new formats here, which you can import from. So if you're coming from an existing if you're coming from a different publishing app, such as Microsoft Publisher or InDesign, you can now actually import some of your creations into Schreibers, and you can actually check out this open source piece of software. So maybe you could save some money by using this instead of paying like Adobe however much for a license to use their software. Maybe you can check out this free and open source alternative. Now, of course, some things may not fully translate over properly. Like for example, with LibreOffice, sometimes things don't translate properly over when it comes to doc files and docx files. So I imagine some similar stuff might happen with Schreibers. But yeah, you can just check it out, I guess. Anyway, moving on to the next story here. System D free distro Nitrux is kicking off 2024 with a new ISO release. So Nitrux is one of the only System D-less distros out there. So it's based on Debian and also has an immutable file system. So those are some interesting features for a distro. Because some people don't like system D. Some people say it's like bloated or it's not a good application. So I guess you can use this System D-less distro if you just want something that works nicely out of the box. And now this new release improves network and password security, and also adds a tiling window manager. So there's a number of updates here. It also includes some updates when it comes to Wacom Linux drivers. So there's now a better GUI for them, allowing you to swap profiles when it comes to your pen. It includes some new features and also a new desktop wallpaper. You can update if you're on this distro, or you can check it out if you haven't already. Do you have any thoughts, Pegasus? Yeah, I personally haven't checked out this distro. Have you tried anything without System D at all? Or do you still just keep System D on your system? Oh, okay. Yeah, so if you don't want to mess around with those kind of oops. So okay, so apparently I haven't been recording desktop audio all this time. So that's not good. That means that none of your audio so far, Piggy, has been on the stream.
Wow.
Oops. So I'd better fix that. I don't know. Have I done that, or is there? Let me see. Let me see. Don't know. Have I? Yeah. So apparently I've just cut off Piggus's audio. Oops.
Oh,
So now you can hear Piggus. Um.
wow.
Yeah. Wow. You're here. And so yeah. I think can you say something again, Piggus, just so I can check?
This is awesome.
Say one more thing, please.
A System D free distro.
Okay, so I've determined that your audio has not been on the stream all this time. And oh my god, I'm even more of a goddamn idiot. I haven't been streaming. I've been recording now. Um, why do I keep on doing these dumb things? Okay, you know, um, do you reckon I should actually, do you think we should redo this, or just continue on like we didn't just do this?
Just continue and just stream the the recording later.
Yeah, yeah. So I am sorry to all the viewers who have been waiting. So apparently I did not hit go live because, of course, on Odyssey you don't have to do that. Uh, and yeah, sometimes I just forget that there is a go live button because you can test stuff out with YouTube before you go live. And yeah, I managed to miss that button, and also I managed to cut off Pegasus' audio, but now you can hear him on the stream. So, why don't we move on to the next story, unless Pigus wants to talk a bit about the latest Artrux release? A bit more. You were talking about, using Artix, weren't you?
Yeah.
So did you not find it functional? What was your problem with that?
I don't know. I think I just didn't do it correctly, so I couldn't boot it. So.
Okay. But yeah, there's functionality to System D. I mean, I don't really get all the hate around it. But yeah, some people think it's bloated and like not good. So so I suppose if you want a System D-less distro, you can check out Artrux. And now there's a new release. So you can check that out with the new wallpaper and some of the new features. And if you're already on this distro, then you can update to this new release. Now, why don't we talk a bit about so this is a CNBC story here. There were multiple sources reporting on it though. So a spot Bitcoin ETF approval may be coming in January, according to experts. I don't know who these experts are. Apparently, the SEC could be approving this new ETF. So yeah, many Bitcoin ETFs have failed in the past 10 years to actually secure US regulatory approval. This is the first one to get this close, and yeah, if this is approved, it will be quite big news in the Bitcoin space. Of course, ETFs are very popular, so if you want to, trade stuff, and you just want an easy way of trading crypto, then a Bitcoin ETF could be quite, attractive. So yeah, I suppose if this is approved, it could be pretty big news for Bitcoin, and yeah, it would be good news if this was approved, because yeah, this would generally be good for the crypto space. I feel. What do you think, Pickers?
I mean, yeah, it is good.
It is good.
It is good.
That's a very positive analysis from Pickers there. It is good. So so yeah. Yeah, I think this will be good news for the crypto space. Of course, all these different investment firms have been waiting on approval for their Bitcoin ETFs. Some really big names in here, like BlackRock, who are BlackRock is one of the biggest investment firms in the world. So yeah, um, it's cool to see these Bitcoin ETFs, and we'll just have to see what happens in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure if there's many Bitcoin ETFs outside of the US, because there's of course ETFs outside of the US. So yeah, I'm sure in some jurisdictions there's already Bitcoin ETFs. However, them being approved in the US is a pretty big deal. Do you know if there's any Bitcoin ETFs in Sweden at all, Piers? Have you been looking
No.
through that?
No.
Okay. So moving on now to the headline story, the one that you guys probably clicked on the video to hear about. So, ChatGPT could soon replace Google Assistant on your Android phone. Says Android Authority here. So most weeks we get one of these stories, a bit of a speculator, a bit of a kind of a bit of speculation on the part of Android Authority here. There's sometimes these stories where they use APK teardowns to try and determine stuff to do with future applications. And this one appears to be pretty solid proof. At least something that they may be working on. So, this version of ChatGPT for Android, this version here, one anyway, this version released last month has added a new activity called com.openai.voiceassistant.assistant activity. This activity is disabled by default, but after apparently Android Authority manually enabling it on one of their devices and launching it, an overlay appears on the screen with the same swirling animation as the one shown when using the in-app voice chat mode. Apparently this could indicate that they could be working on this ChatGPT alternative, not ChatGPT, Google Assistant alternative. So this does look a lot like the Google Assistant kind of thing where when you hit the Google Assistant button or you say "Hey Google," it will show a kind of animation and then you can talk to the Google Assistant. There seems to be a similar thing going on here with ChatGPT, and this could be pretty big news, pretty big competition for Google, who have kind of not really had much competition in the assistant space on Android. Only a few other applications out there. Personally, I went looking for them at one stage, and there just weren't that many. So this could actually be legitimate competition with Google. And we'll just have to see what happens with this, whether this turns out to be an actual feature or whether it's just a test from the developers. What do you think, Pigus?
I think would compared to the Google Assistant, I think this would be much better experience. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think this would be a much better experience because people like Google Assistant, but also on the other hand, it just doesn't have the
You
same
know
AI
what I mean?
kind of
Yeah.
AI smarts of Google not Google Assistant, of ChatGPT, because of course it's just a better model, and Google Assistant is just not really an LLM as much as just a assistant that will toggle settings and like tell you the weather or whatever, maybe engage in a bit of conversation, but overall it's not really on the same level as ChatGPT.
Hmm.
So seeing it on the actual as an actual alternative on the settings page is a pretty interesting thing. So we'll just have to see whether this actually materializes in a future update or whether this just ends up being some sort of test by the ChatGPT developers, and maybe it never comes to God, maybe this never kind of comes to actually being a feature, but yeah, we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. Now, Google appears to be working on an advanced version of Bard, which will cost you money. So Bard Advanced with Google One. Apparently, it's coming up with things saying you can try Bard Advanced for 3 months on Earth. So this suggests that Bard Advanced may be a Gemini ultra-powered AI, which actually costs the user money. So Google have been talking previously about new stuff with their LLM, and yeah, this could be some pretty big news if it actually costs money to use Bard, and they roll out this new paid tier. What do you think, Pierce? Have you tried out Bard at all or not?
I have not tried it. But I
Okay.
guess like
Yeah.
they'll do the same as OpenAI, because I'd assume there's a lot of people interested in paying for this stuff, so there's a lot of money at play here.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of users of Bard and of
Mhm.
ChatGPT, and a lot of them would be willing to pay for more for better AI, and being able to give more queries and stuff. Of course, additional functionality, people will pay for it, and yeah, I think Google could actually make quite a bit of money from offering this advanced version of Bard. Now, moving on to the library section. So, LBRY, of course, a video platform, if some viewers aren't aware, because, if you're watching my channel, you don't necessarily know about library as a project, but it's a YouTube alternative type thing. But of course, with the SEC stuff, there's been a lot of kind of changes when it comes to library, and of course, Library Inc. as a company, they actually shut down. So apparently, the snapshots for library blockchain, the official source for the snapshots, the library.com link, is no longer up. So you'll now get a 403. So there's nothing being hosted on that address anymore. So yeah. Do you have any thoughts, Pigus? Yeah, I mean, you're the one that brought this story to me. Do you have any thoughts?
I mean, not really. They're down, so
Yeah, there's not really been. I don't think many people have been reporting on this. It's not really a big story.
mm,
But it's kind of
there are like
yeah.
we have spun up a temporary uh, snapshot server for this.
Yeah, so if you want to find the actual library blockchain snapshot, then you can actually go over to a link. Can you send it to me, Pigus, quickly, please? Um,
Okay.
just in case anybody is curious. So if you want to actually download a library blockchain snapshot, it's unlikely that you do, but there's some temporary hosting for it here, so you can try and download it. I'm not gonna download the full 100 gigabyte file during the stream. So yeah. But yeah, apparently this is, the official library source for this is down, and of course, Library Inc. as a company already shut down, so it's really just some of the people behind the library, Library Inc. doing it on their own, um, without actually, making money from the company or getting any sort of assistance. So yeah, we'll just have to see what happens with Library Inc. What's the stuff that Library Inc. produced, and also the Odysee. So Odysee actually being acquired by a different crypto firm. Were they acquired? Who knows? Um,
Exactly. Who knows?
yeah, and that's a problem, isn't it?
Very,
Because we don't
yeah,
know.
it's very quiet about that.
Yep, and nobody seems to be really able to answer the question right now. Because, yeah. Nobody on the Odysee team is answering any questions to do with this, and they're the ones that would answer if there were some if they were acquired. They would be the ones to say. And of course, they said that they were getting help from this other crypto project. I forget their name now, but they were propping up Odysee, and now, of course, they were apparently sold, weren't they? Was Odysee sold or was it not sold? Do we know?
Uh,
Because yeah,
totally. Yeah, I'm not totally sure because I haven't looked at it, but yeah.
yeah. But the murky situation here really doesn't make Odysee look like a video platform you really want to be using. Because, of course, if you don't really know who the owner is, it's not really a good situation. So we'll just have to wait and see. The Library Foundation are continuing to try to support the project, continue the work that the company tried to do, with trying to maintain stuff, but it is very hard, especially
Mm.
without the capital and resources that a company has. Yeah, so with that limited capital and resources, yeah, it'll be quite difficult to maintain a lot of this stuff and continue the library project. But the foundation are trying, aren't they, Pigus?
Mm. Yeah. Cool Guy has been working on releasing new releases for some of the software.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the foundation has forked some library.io repos.
Cool. And yeah, you're a board member, of course. Disclosure that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. It's good to see the foundation, people like Cool Guy, and you doing some work when it comes to the foundation and trying to keep the library project alive. So that's cool. So now moving on to the next section, the miscellaneous news here. So Samsung TVs will now apparently have an official controller. So there's a game controller, not any sort of controller, a game controller, and apparently it will cost $50 from PDP. So they're a controller manufacturer, and apparently they are making this in collaboration with Samsung. So this is an official controller, and the details on this are quite kind of. There's not really that many details on this controller yet. This is what it looks like. You can see it on screen. And yeah, it looks like quite a generic game controller with some back pedals. So maybe you can do some controls using those. And overall, it looks like a pretty standard controller for $50. And of course, at one stage, $50 was quite a bit for a controller. That was how much you pay for the Sony and Xbox controllers. But I'm not really sure how much a Xbox or Sony controller is these days. I mean, a PS controller. I mean, I've seen the Xbox controller is retailing at about £40 now. So I'm not really sure what the prices are for the PlayStation controllers. But this is on the lower end of the spectrum, I guess. So yeah, low end on
Cool.
the price spectrum, and yeah, I guess if you want a controller for your TV games, then I guess you can use this new controller. So of course they didn't announce this at CES, which is coming up. They've actually just decided to do it right now. So, so yeah, it's a bit of a weird time to be announcing such a thing. Maybe they're just trying to make this a small release. Maybe nobody really, maybe they just think this will be a small little accessory. Because I can't imagine too many people buying a game controller for their TV. So yeah. I'm not really sure what will happen here. Do you have any thoughts, Biggest, about just game controllers for TVs? I mean, well, what in the world?
It feels kinda unnecessary.
Yeah, unless you're playing some interesting Android games or whatever on your smart TV. um,
Yeah, because like a lot of controllers you can just connect to your TV through
yeah,
adapters and stuff. So
yeah, maybe Samsung may try and lock other controllers out, maybe at some stage. Who knows? Because this appears to be using the Samsung Gaming Hub, so an official first-party thing. So it's apparently a cloud gaming interface on the smart TVs. So, maybe it's necessary for that reason. Although, of course, you could connect a standard Xbox or PS controller. Now, continuing on to the next story here. So, here's one out of India. So, Uber is apparently testing flexible pricing in India in a dozen of Indian cities. So apparently you can now put a certain price, and you can do competitive pricing. So this is a pretty interesting thing. So Uber are now letting you set your own price. They have put some limits on it now though. You now can't actually put your price too low. So previously you could set it as low as you want. Now there is actually a price, kind of a price limit. You can only there's kind of like a price minimum. I mean, so you can submit however much you want to pay for a ride, and of course drivers, I guess, can accept you based on how much you're willing to pay. So I suppose if you want a really quick journey, if you want to quickly get somewhere, you can pay above the odds for a journey. But if you don't really care too much, you can put the suggested price or maybe a bit of a lower price. Do you have any thoughts, Biggest?
no.
Yeah, this is pretty innovative. I haven't seen this on many other taxi apps. I mean, there's a few apps out there like Bolt, Lyft. There's of course the local providers like in Birmingham. There's TOA. In London, there's some providers, but of course, these different firms such as Uber kind of compete slightly outside of the traditional taxi realm, and they bring some interesting features such as this flexible pricing in India here. And apparently, this may be rolled out in more widely in the future. Right now, this is only happening in tier 2 and tier 3 markets in India. I don't know how they define those, but yeah, apparently this will be a feature rolling out more widely in the future. Do you have any thoughts on Uber, Piggis? Are you a fan of Uber, or are you not a fan of Uber? What?
Uh, Personally, I've never used it, so I don't
Yeah,
can't say much about it.
yeah, I don't use Uber personally, uh, but yeah, um, there's always the debate to do with the amount that drivers get paid and kind of how ethical it is, and yeah, that's a different debate to be had. But this is just an interesting feature from Uber. Now, here's ZDNet's guide to CES 2024. So how about I just cut to the chase here, say that CES is happening on Tuesday, the 9th of 2024, this year, and yeah, it will be starting on Tuesday, and yeah, apparently it will happen until Friday. So yeah, you can go to CES if you've been invited, and yeah, of course it's not easy to get into CES. However, it is one of the biggest tech shows in the world. It happens every single year, and of course, there's always the kind of fanfare around it, and there's all sorts of companies coming to kind of show off their new products and unveil some new technology. So it's always interesting to see the coverage of CES because there's always new innovation happening each year, and we'll just have to see what happens in CES this year. Yeah, there's always a decent amount of TVs and stuff like that at CES, so we'll just have to see what technology comes out of it. Anyway, moving on to the next story here. So, the last 3 stories are from Torrent Freak. So the Estonian government is apparently may start blocking pirate websites. So they're considering implementing a piracy website blocker. And yeah, this is another country trying to implement such measures. There have been countries before trying to do this. However, Estonia are the latest one to try and try and implement this to try and block pirate websites on a national level. Now, of course, I do wonder how they will actually try and block these, because, of course, they can try and use ISP blocks. However, that will just be DNS blocks on these websites. So if you actually use a custom DNS, then of course you could get around this. However, as we will see in a couple stories time, DNS isn't safe either from anti-piracy regulation, and there will also be some attempts to try and end piracy through custom DNSs. Do you have any thoughts, Pierce? Okay. So moving on to the next story here. So Lithuania, they have implemented fines for piracy. So apparently there are 140 euro fines. So apparently they say that this will pay off. So if you get handed a fine for piracy, you could be fined at 140 euros on the spot without a court hearing. So these are of course measures to try and reduce piracy. Now, whether this is actually an kind of an appropriate measure, given the fact that this is not really very fair and just, is another question. Because you could argue that doing it without a court is quite unjust, because you're not letting people state their case. You're just you're just finding them on the spot, and they're not even seeing any sort of hearing. So yeah, you could say this is unjust. However, it is a measure to reduce piracy, and we'll just have to see what happens when it comes to if this will actually reduce piracy, or whether this will just reduce the amount of kind of people trying to pirate without taking proper precautions. Do you have any thoughts, Pegasus, on this story?
I mean, as you say, it makes people think more about what they are doing.
Yeah, it does. I mean,
even though, yeah, it's not very just, maybe.
yeah, it does seem rather arbitrary to just be slapped with 140 euro fine without even going to any sort of court hearing or anything. Just being giving that out on the spot. Maybe it's not the best idea, and of course, taking direct action against individuals is not so popular. So we'll just have to see how this turns out. Now, on to the story that we were talking about earlier. So apparently, um, so another story from Torrent Freak here. Apparently, Canal Plus are suing Cloudflare, Google, and Cisco to try and fight piracy. So they apparently are doing this new suit to try and get them to block these piracy websites. It's interesting to see that Quad9 is not involved here, so that DNS service is not affected by this lawsuit. However, this is clearly Canal Plus trying to get um, Cloudflare, Google, and Cisco to try and block these piracy websites distributing their content. Now, you could say they have the right to do this, because they do. However, we'll just have to see how this stands up in court. And also, of course, this does kind of, this is quite bad if you wanted to access these websites. However, they are illegal. So, there's kind of, it's not the best blocking on the DNS level, I don't think. But on the other hand, it is somewhat illegal. What do you think, Piers? Do you have any thoughts on these DNS blocks? Okay. So continuing on to the end, I guess. Because yeah, that is at the end of today's stream. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and share. Also, you can check out my latest video. So I've actually done a review of Mojeek. Happy New Year, of course, everybody. And yeah, you can check out this Mojeek review. I do need to issue a few corrections when it comes to that. One of them is the fact that they are not actually based out of Brighton. They are based
Hey guys,
out
today
of Croydon these days. And yeah, that's one thing to mention. And also that, yeah, apparently, um, what was the other correction I needed to put in? They actually replied to me on Twitter when I posted a link to the YouTube video, and they retweeted my tweet with the video link. But they did reply saying that, yeah, they've only got one person currently in Brighton, and that they weren't started by a student, they were just started by somebody at the Sussex Innovation Centre. So yeah, they apparently linked this to give a bit more info on their history. So you can see it here. Um, so you can see here that they launched in 2004 on 2 donated servers. They accepted money from private investors in 2009. And yeah, you can see some of the more modern history as well. So you can check out my review on Mojeek. So you can see that on my YouTube channel. I'll be soon posting that on Library as well. I need to get around to doing that. And yeah, it was cool checking out Mojeek. I think that they have a pretty unique search engine. Of course, it has its own index, which makes it a bit unique. But also, it doesn't really have the best results from, there are search engines such as Bing and Google which have a better index. However, it is cool to see a search engine try and actually compete with the big tech search engines such as Google and Bing, because they're really the two big search engines these days. DuckDuckGo, Ecosia, Quant, all of them mainly rely on on Bing, and of course, Start Page rely on Google. So most search engines that claim to be private rely on Bing or Google. And while that isn't really technically a problem, it could be a problem if it isn't properly anonymized, or if they could somehow use, if Microsoft or Google could somehow use these queries to track users. However, we don't really know to what extent stuff like that could happen. Uh, you know, but yeah. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Yeah, so check out my latest video talking about Mojeek. I'll be releasing a video on EE soon, and I'll also probably be releasing a video on the Architel. Uh, I forget how to say it. Architel flip phone that I have. So I'll probably be talking a bit about that, looking over the specs and seeing what cool stuff you can get up to with that in the year 2024. And yeah, overall, some content is coming up on the channel, and you can subscribe if you want to see more of that stuff. Anyway, would you like to say goodbye, Piggis?
Bye bye.
Goodbye.